The 15th of March, 1939, Prague. German troops enter the city, and Czechoslovakia ceases to exist as a sovereign state. In the newly founded Protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia, remnants of democratic institutions collapse and repression becomes a daily reality. Nazi occupation forces political life underground and accustoms society to violence, surveillance, and the suspension of legal norms. What begins as occupation does not end with liberation in May 1945. The practices of wartime control are carried into the post-war order, now justified in the name of revolution and security. In the army, this continuity is especially visible. Officers are screened, dismissed, and soon after the communist coup in 1948, arrested, tortured, and executed as political enemies. The line between wartime repression and post-war terror blurs, linking foreign occupation to domestic dictatorship. This continuity of power and violence finds its most ruthless expression in the career of General Bedřich Reicin. Bedřich Reicin was born as Friedrich Reinzinger on the 29th of September 1911 in the Moravian town of Přerov, then part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, into the family of a teacher of the local Jewish religious community. As a young boy, he attended a gymnasium and later a German business academy in the city of Pilsen, today's Czech Pilsen, but he did not complete his studies as he was expelled for his political activities. The reason was that already in his youth, he was drawn to various political movements. He joined the Zionist scout organization Techalat Lavan, and soon also became a member of the Komsomol, the all-Union Leninist Young Communist League in the newly established Czechoslovak Republic. Reicin soon became one of the most active and aggressive young functionaries of the Communist Party in Czechoslovakia, and even criticized the party leadership around Klement Gottwald for not being radical enough. During the 1930s, his name was well known to the police and Czechoslovak security services. He worked as political agitator and editor of the communist youth magazine Mlada Garda, meaning the Young Guard. From 1936, he worked in the propaganda department of the Communist Party's Central Secretariat, and from 1938, he worked as a journalist for the communist daily Rude Pravo, meaning the Red Right. At the same time, he became involved in espionage activities for the Soviet Union. Thanks to these activities, he was repeatedly taken to court, but criminal proceedings against him were always dropped. The situation changed when Nazi Germany occupied Czechoslovakia in March 1939, and the Nazis created the Protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia. Reicin, as a known communist with expertise in illegal work, was soon arrested and handed over to the Gestapo, the German secret police, at Pankrác Prison in Prague, where he remained in investigative custody until October 1939. A year later, he was surprisingly allowed to leave the Protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia legally, together with his Jewish wife, Irena, and decided to travel to the Soviet Union. This later became the source of rumors that he had cooperated with the Gestapo and had been sent to the Soviet Union on a hidden mission as a spy. No proof of such cooperation was ever found, and at the same time of his release, Nazi Germany was still a partner of the Soviet Union, meaning his release did not have to be based on cooperation with the Gestapo. Reicin went to Moscow, where the exiled communist leadership from Czechoslovakia was based, and worked in the Czechoslovak section of Radio Moscow. His radio work ended when Germany attacked the Soviet Union in June 1941. On the 25th of June 1941, Soviet security organs arrested Reicin, and he was deported to a labor camp in the Kola Peninsula in northern Russia, near the Finnish border. He remained there until early 1942, when Soviet authorities released and sent him to the Czechoslovak military unit, which was being formed in the town of Buzuluk in the Soviet Union. He arrived in such poor physical condition that he was sent directly to hospital. By enlisting in the Czechoslovak unit, Reicin saved his life and rapidly aligned himself with the communists' goals. They wanted to build a combat-ready force under communist control, supported by Soviet authorities, that would strengthen communist influence during the war and shape post-war Czechoslovakia. From the beginning, he emerged as the key communist figure within this unit. He sought personal power without oversight and cultivated close ties with the Soviet intelligence officers, creating a monopoly over contacts with Soviet security organs. His aggressive methods earned him both enemies and loyal followers, whom he promoted to influential positions. In late 1944, he was sent to liberated Subcarpathia and Ruthenia to organize administration in this former Czechoslovak region. When it became clear that the Soviet Union intended to annex the region, he openly served Soviet interests against those of Czechoslovakia. This approach paid him off, and when the new Czechoslovak intelligence service, Obranné zpravodajství, meaning defensive intelligence, was created at the beginning of 1945, Reicin became its head. Known as the OBZ, the military intelligence service was responsible for internal and external security, countering sabotage and espionage, and cooperating with Soviet organs in building and security apparatus in liberated Czechoslovakia. The Prague uprising began on the 5th of May, 1945, and 4 days later, the Red Army entered the nearly liberated city. As head of the OBZ, Reicin strongly expanded the organization in both structure and personnel, and became an important player in the struggle over the future of post-war Czechoslovakia. This struggle was fought between Democrats and Communists, but the Democrats were rapidly losing ground. The key ministries in the newly re-established Czechoslovakia were in Communist hands, and changes also took place in the army. Officers close to the Democratic parties were removed from senior positions and replaced by men linked to the Communist Party, while Reicin's personal power within this system continued to grow. Under Reicin's leadership, who was at that time also an agent of the NKVD, the Soviet Intelligence and Security Service, OBZ collected information, often with direct assistance from Soviet organs, on officers and soldiers considered unreliable by the Communists. Reicin prepared provocations against democratic forces in order to discredit them, and after the Communist coup in February 1948, Communists began arresting officers and dismissing from the army those who did not fit into the new dictatorship. Soon, Reicin ordered the imprisonment of many officers of the Czechoslovak army who had fought against Nazi Germany during the Second World War. Those officers who failed to escape into exile ended up in prison or in forced labor camps, often without proper trials, and their families were punished as well. The most shocking case in which Reicin played a crucial role was that of General Heliodor Píka. This Czechoslovak general, who had served democratic Czechoslovakia during the Second World War as chief of the Czechoslovak military mission in the Soviet Union, was arrested, tortured, subjected to a staged trial, and executed. Píka became the first victim of judicial murder in the Czechoslovak communist show trials. Between February 1948 and the end of 1949, almost 3,000 officers and generals were dismissed from the army. 1 year later, the number of dismissed professional soldiers rose to nearly 5,000. Many passed through the dreaded Domeček in Prague, where the OBZ under Reicin employed interrogation methods ranging from sleep and food deprivation and psychological abuse to physical torture, including exposure to cold, beatings, strangulation, drowning, and other forms of physical violence. Those who survived later compared these practices to those of the Gestapo and Nazi Germany, with one brutal difference. This time, they were tortured by their fellow citizens, not by foreign occupiers. Orders for the physical and psychological abuse of the accused were issued personally by Bedřich Reicin. Beyond direct violence, the OBZ also relied on systematic deception and infiltration. It organized intelligence operations aimed at penetrating anti-communist groups in Czechoslovakia, identifying their members and subsequently arresting them, often leading to long prison sentences or execution. Through these activities, Reicin rose to one of the most powerful positions in the state. He became Deputy Minister of Defense and was promoted to the rank of General. OBZ structures, which transformed in 1946 into the 5th branch of the General Staff, at all levels were built on his direct orders. He accumulated compromising material on many individuals, sometimes based on truth and sometimes fabricated at his request. His power rested on fear, and there are rumors that he used assassinations in his struggle for power in communist Czechoslovakia. His position finally began to weaken when Alexei Čepička, the son-in-law of President Klement Gottwald, became Minister of National Defense in 1950. Power struggles emerged within the Ministry of Defense, and Čepička sought to break Reicin's influence, using, among other things, numerous complaints from officers about his brutal methods. On the 8th of February 1951, Bedřich Reicin was arrested and subjected to the same interrogation methods he had used against other Czechoslovak officers. He was not charged for his illegal practices, for torture, or for show trials. Instead, he was accused as part of an alleged anti-state conspiratorial center around Rudolf Slansky. The trial was prepared under the supervision of Soviet advisors, and the accusations followed the established model of Stalinist show trials across Eastern Europe. In November 1952, the trial of the anti-state conspiratorial center took place at Pankrác Prison in Prague. 14 leading communists stood before the court. They were forced to memorize confessions prepared by their interrogators and recite them in court. They were accused of espionage, conspiracy against the Republic, cooperation with foreign intelligence services, Titoism, and other fabricated crimes. Among the defendants were former Communist Party General Secretary Rudolf Slansky, Foreign Minister Vladimir Klementis, senior party and state officials, and Deputy Minister of Defense Bedřich Reicin. 11 of the accused, including Reicin, were sentenced to death, and 3 received life imprisonment. Czechoslovak President Klement Gottwald refused to grant clemency, and during the night of the 3rd of December 1952, the sentences were carried out at Pankrác Prison. The executed men were cremated in December 1952, and their ashes were allegedly scattered on a road somewhere north of Prague. Years later, the official view of the trial changed. In 1963, the verdict against Reicin was annulled in its entirety, ruling that the charges of high treason, espionage, and military treason had been fabricated, and that the entire trial had been manipulated. At the same time, party rehabilitation commissions examined his activities. They confirmed that he had been responsible for illegal methods, persecution, and the destruction of the lives of many innocent officers. For these crimes, however, he was never tried. When Bedřich Reicin was hanged, he was 41 years old.
Thanks for watching the World History Channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.